Good morning, greetings. Guten Tag, Talafalava. This is Dr. Snow Brown speaking to you all. A very blessed good morning. That's right. Or Guten Tag, Talafalava. And kia ora. O tēnā koe, tēnā koutou, katoa. I'm in the land of the Aotearoa, New Zealand. That's correct. Anyway, what am I going to preach about this morning? Remember, I keep praying. I pray the Kkks Soisa prayer. That's correct. And, and we're still in the process of cleansing, sanctifying. That's correct. But don't forget, I am a meek, natural noble pastor. This is what I do. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to preach, that's correct. And whatever the guardian angel Archangel Warren, or in this case, guardian angel Lama tells me to preach about, that's how it is. So there is only one type of clergyman. It's a new clergyman. That is myself. It's called a natural noble pastor. That is meek, like a child. That's correct. That has a kingdom, Crystal Kingdom Church TV Limited. It is actually a church, but it's also actually a private, independent monarch. That's correct. Meek monarch, a brown monarch. There are similarities between the Catholic faith and my brand new faith. Now, this is a private monarch, by the way. That means it's owned by an individual. That's correct. It is not owned by a church authority like the Catholic Church or the Baptist Church. But nothing, very similar. Probably there are similarities between the establishment of my church or my kingdom. Well, here's the similarity between my faith and the so-called Catholic faith. The Catholic faith, do they have a sovereign head? Yes, they do have a sovereign head. And the sovereign head of the Catholic faith, or the head of state, remember, it is a state, that's correct. Vatican City, because the Catholic Church has got their own state, that's correct, is Pope Francis. So Pope Francis is the sovereign head of the Catholic faith. That is correct, or the Catholic Church. So which means he would be that's correct. And so in Crystal Kingdom Church TV, because my faith or my church is an interactive church, and it was created for that purpose, it was born that way because it is a Knights Templar. That's correct. Meek type of church. That's correct. And it is a reborn faith as well. So, the sovereign head, that's correct, in my faith is Queen Snow Brown. And who is Queen Snow Brown? Well, it's Holy Mother, but the other sovereign head in my kingdom is actually myself, Dr. Snow Brown. That's correct. So that's the similarity. And the Catholic Church, their faith is a monarch. And my faith is a meek monarch. It's a brand new meek monarch, that's correct, in the form of a brown monarch. Brown, meek monarch, that's correct. And the Catholic faith, Catholic Church, is a monarch, that's correct. Now, of course, the difference is they have a hierarchy of clergymen, church authorities, that's the sort of rankings, that's correct. And the cardinals, the archbishops, the father priests, the bishops, that's correct. So, you can see now why they are blessed so much so, the Catholic faith, over the years. And their numbers have increased so much, it's because they are a monarch, that's correct. And I am a brand new baby monarch in the form of, this type of clergyman, except I'm only one type of clergyman. So what would be the difference between Pope Francis and this clergyman or this meek national pastor. I think the difference is Pope Francis is not a king, but he is a sovereign head. He's kind of like the representative of Jesus in the Catholic faith. He's equivalent to a king, but he's not a king, as in my case. I am actually a meek king and queen. That's correct. I have 2 crowns. That's correct. And I also have a 3rd crown, which is national pastor. So in other words, the difference between Pope Francis, His Holiness Pope Francis, and myself is that I am a meek king. And I'm also a meek queen. That's correct. And I'm also a king. That's correct. So in other words, do I have a throne and a crown and the rest of it? Yes, I do. And of course, my crown is always Dr. Snowbrown. That is correct. But never Queen Snowbrown. Because Queen Snowbrown is Holy Mother. That is correct. I never call myself Queen Snowbrown. And I never address myself either as Queen Snowbrown. I am always Dr. Snowbrown. But the link is, that's correct, that Queen Snowbrown, yes, indeed, is my other title of a queen. That's correct. A heavenly kingdom, a heavenly crown. That's correct. So I guess it is what it is, people. Welcome to my world. I am a meek king. That's correct. So what does that mean? What is the other mystery of, the revelation that I've just discovered? That I'm actually a meek king. That's correct. So I must be a full royal. Yes, I am. I must have nobility and royalty in my blood. Yes, I do. Because that's why my intellectual property was born that way. What does that mean also? That my daddy could have been a king? Yes, he would have only had to have been a king in order for my intellectual property to be born this way. And that means that my parents would have had to have been of royal status or had some nobility in their DNA or bloodline in order for me to be born this way, let alone for my intellectual property. It's actually a German intellectual property to be born this way in Aotearoa, New Zealand, or in New Zealand, in your country. That's correct. So the mystery is, my daddy was definitely, a king. They wouldn't, yes, right, a mystery king that nobody would ever have known. So, and probably in his demeanor and the way that he behaved, probably, if you've got to go back and think about why your daddy was always the way that he was, and was always possibly screaming at certain people and abusing certain people. You see, my daddy is generally a very quiet, reserved, meek, noble person, that noble, Pākehā. So he was part Samoan as well, but, half caste. But if people, like myself, if people test him, push the wrong buttons, cross his German side or Scottish side, or even English side, then you knew you were going to get abused. That's correct. I wouldn't be surprised if he started yelling and screaming and swearing at them, because on a noble's level, meaning on a noble king's level, he's got every right to do so. If the commoners were crossing his boundaries and constantly doing stuff to annoy the hell out of my poor daddy, noble daddy, that's correct. He's a noble Pākehā. He's part royal, that's correct. Except the moment he married my mummy dearest, that's correct, he became a full king. The status of royal king. So here you are actually listening to a meek royal king. Myself, that's correct, in the form of Dr. Snowbrown. Now, some of you will never really understand that and you'll always be in denial. And I think already it has happened in this country. The government of New Zealand is so racist and arrogant and so jealous, jello mellow marshmallow, that it allowed it to set up here at this address where this, majority of tenants inside this building increased so much so, mostly being members of the Mmbs Association of Upper Hutt, the Mmbs, but they're also Kkks associates. In other words, the government of New Zealand allowed this organization, with my rallies who are connected to this organization, to carry out whatever experiments that they wanted to carry out to do inside this building in relation to this meek noble. That's correct. So they wanted to exploit and study this noble because, after all, they knew I'm a full royal. She is of royal status, royal blood. That's correct. She is of pure bread, pure hybrid. My status is so high, and they knew that. So, of course, the KKK and your cousin so-called crazy maniacs couldn't resist the temptation of wanting to study this meek noble here inside this address. And they sure did give you the run for your money. That's correct. They sure did test, and I mean, there were a lot of experiments that went on here. You wouldn't want to know. That's correct. In the last 8.5 years. So I was actually not only a victim, but more like, more or less, a guinea pig for some kind of crazy experiment that they were doing here. And every subject, every person that is part of this address, they are all part of this experiment. In fact, it feels more like a penitentiary inside this address, and also like a torture chamber, because there is some maniac or some pervert that is constantly listening in and watching. Can you imagine how that feels? It is so insulting. There you lying on your bed inside your bedroom, getting dressed and doing your own stuff. And there's somebody with perverted eyes, some creep, some disgusting thing, that's correct, is watching you, watching and eyeing you, eyeing you up and down. It is not nice at all to be stalked like that. No, that is so disgusting in New Zealand. Me se Aotearoa New Zealand. The Maoris in this country, in terms of these people, like these kind of Maoris that are living inside this address, they're also part, the Pākehā, are the most disgusting. Not only are they makaiku, moekolo, lokoleanga, whaikonfiki, but they are perverts. They've just got it. They've just got the addiction. It's bad enough they're addicted to drugs, alcohol, and sex, but they just got another addiction altogether to eavesdropping, to spying on people, and eavesdropping on people like they've never seen you before, like they've never ever, like you're some, I don't know, some interesting, exciting weirdo. That's correct. It needs to be, stalked and spied upon, and eavesdropped to. I don't like this setup here at this address. I feel more like a piece of meat and a chattel than a human being. That's correct. It's exactly how I felt in the last 8.5 years living here inside this address. Constantly being stalked, being spied, being studied. And it looks like they were coming in a lot. Now, I don't know why, but obviously they've been collecting data, and they definitely have been doing a lot of experiments. Now, for the KKK to have that kind of full privilege, where the government of New Zealand is actually giving them that kind of privilege, where the okay, only because of Mr. Willow or Mr. Anthony Shaw, people like that are part of the elite, they give them the okay to, okay. You can do your experiments. You can do what you like with her. That's correct. You can collect as much data. We will give you, the support, the backing. It will even aid and abet any crimes that you commit. Upon this meek noble. We don't care. Go ahead. We're giving you the okay. You can study. You can do whatever you like with her. That actually places the government of New Zealand as guilty of treasons. I'm sorry. The fact that the government of New Zealand actually allowed these criminals inside this building and this criminal organization with the Kkk, to torture you, to subject you to tortures and cruelties, and to apply their criminal harmful protocols and arbitrary dictatorships in the last 8.5 years and even in the last 26 years. Oh, well, that just makes them guilty of treasons. That's correct. So what do you suppose, I ought to do as a meek king now that I'm a king? That's correct. In my own right, a sovereign head of my own independent state. In your country, that's correct. Well, here's what I can actually do. Like I said, I have got more rights to discipline any ratbags in this country. Anybody who's committed any treasons today, I've got a right to discipline the government of New Zealand. I've got a right to discipline the New Zealand police force. I've got a right to discipline my rallies who've been part of the conspiracy to harm or stalk or to even torture this noble here in your country. I've also got a right to discipline any citizens or anybody that's harmed, because I'm a king and I have a monarch. Now, that's not going to look good at all for New Zealand already. New Zealand already has been charged by the spirit of death as the government of New Zealand, the New Zealand police, and even officials in the system that were part of the big conspiracy. That's great. No, this is not a conspiracy theory. Yeah, that's right. Sadly, I'm going to file my restraining order, hopefully by the 15th of December this year. And when I do, as a king, as a meek sovereign head of a brand new monarch in kingdom, and even with a private monarch in this private company in this country, don't be surprised if the government, if Parliament gets dissolved. So this criminal organization called Mmbs Association is definitely going to get disbanded and dissolved. Now, don't be surprised if I turn around and dissolved Parliament for the very first time on a restraining order. First time ever. I dissolved your government. Parliament, that's correct, because of this criminal organization and the Kkk and your rallies. And also because the New Zealand police, remember, those two officers who committed a heinous crime upon my person on the 24th of June 2003, and it had also been party to commission of other heinous crimes in secret upon my person. That's correct. They represent the government of your government. They represent the government of New Zealand. That's correct. So they are all guilty of treasons. So how dare you think that I don't have any rights to say what I say? And the way that I've been speaking to all of you? Have you been saying, who the hell am I? Well, now you know who I am. That's correct. I mean, who the hell do the police force think that they can just enter my private, residence whenever they feel like it? Just because supposedly the government of New Zealand gave them, stupid privileges like the elite privileges, which it still breaks the law, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Still doesn't make it right either. Even if they were associates of that organization, the Mmbs Association, that's right, the red one, and even the white one, it still didn't give them any fucking rights to come into my address, to torture the fuck out of me, because that's what the New Zealand police force did here inside this address with these son of a bitches inside this address. That's what your government gave these people. That's right. And you're guilty. Your government is going to get dissolved for the first time ever by a real Pākehā. That's correct. Oh, that's terribly sad. It is sad. Because what that means is that I've got the power to shut down your government and overrule your government and even overrule the courts. That's correct. That's what it means to be a sovereign head or a noble king. Oh, well, shit, that's correct. What that means is that if your parliament gets dissolved by the courts, that's correct, the government of Germany can overrule your government. And then what would happen next is that the Nazi soldiers, my wish would come true. 1,000 Nazi soldiers would come storming here in your country and take over, that's correct, and discipline and bury the enemies of the new sovereign head. Now, if you look at the logo, that's correct. Which country would this sovereign head be? Well, obviously, on my logo, if it says Aotearoa New Zealand, then I must be the new sovereign head of your country. Except because you're so bloody ignorant, and you're such a bunch of fools as well, and you don't know anything, other than, of course, the elites would know what that means. But, of course, he didn't want to believe it. Well, there you go. So only a sovereign head can dissolve parliament. That's correct. Or a prime minister. Or the governor general. That's correct. Yeah, exactly. That's what happened to dummies who not only who take advantage of you and steal from you. But I mean, I was starting to wonder why the police were always, ignoring your complaints. Why weren't they making arrests and investigating? That's correct, your complaints. And it was because of your rallies. It was because of your rallies' connection to that criminal organization. That's correct. In terms of your cousin is sick with incest, except because New Zealand and the government of New Zealand and the rest of the elites are so hard up with the sex addiction, because take a look at the over 70 criminal organizations. Why have you got that many? It's because this country is built on the god of idolatry, meaning the god of sexual immorality. It's because your country is so sick with sex addiction that it allowed it. It ran away with the spoon and the cow and the sheep. It allowed it over 70 criminal organizations to be established. That's correct. When ideally they shouldn't have. I think the problem was, if I have to give you an illustration, let's say my cousin was born in New Zealand. She's part Tokelau, part Samoan, part German, English and Scottish. That's correct, the rest of it. But her last name is Baker. That's correct. And she's married to my dad's youngest brother, Busby Treasons. So that would make Busby Treasons my cousin's uncle. That's correct. That is my cousin's mother's brother. That's correct. But because she looks, and I think they all got Portugal. So that's why she looks that way. She sounds very Pākehā. That's correct. Maybe it's because we are Pākehā with the last name German, last name Treasons, the Webster side. That's correct. Your granny side. And also the Scottish side. But if I had to do a screening of my DNA, I would probably be more Pākehā than Samoan. I wouldn't be surprised. More German out of the whole lot. That's correct. Than any of them. So can you imagine now how your cousin has been living it out, has been enjoying all her privileges, despite she's living in sin. That's correct. Although they would like to beg to differ with you and say, oh, well, the whaiwhiao, the Psalm 150 hours have actually blessed my union with you know, with the youngest. Hang on, the Psalm 150 hour have actually accepted and forgiven and blessed their so-called incestuous so-called relationship or marriage or union. There is an abomination, I know, to God, to the gods. But I mean, they've been living like a couple, enjoying having 2 children, 5 grandchildren, and here's you, and they have the nerve to control your life on the level of a criminal and a convict. That's correct. And even on the level as a slave, as an Mmbs slave. Your cousin is incredible. That's correct. How she is able to control your family and even your privileges and even your daddy through other people. That's correct. Other officials in the system, even among the elites, and even among your dad's brothers and sisters. Oh, she good, all right? She is good. I gotta give it to her. My cousin is incredible. She's got a psychology of she's got a mind, I don't know, she's got a manipulative mind, but one that is she's so persuasive, but she can actually blind people. I guess her beauty, that's correct. If I had to put it this way, my cousin's beauty and her so-called demeanor and everything else is so, is so toxic. It's not toxic, but it's so, how can I say it? Can easily cast a spell over people. That's correct. What I'm saying is that because of her beauty and everything else, man, she could make you do things without her even asking you to do it. You know what I mean? My cousin is that powerful. That's correct. She's got a special kind of, I don't know, demeanor, the spirit of, I would say, in this case, she's got Satan. Satan that is like so smooth like a snake. That's correct. He slithers with a snake, but she can easily cast a spell over you and blindfold you. That's correct. And you wouldn't even know what happened. That's correct. You could easily fall in love with my cousin. That's how dangerous your cousin is. She could easily fool them and blind them. That's correct. Excuse me, pardon me. And yet your cousin is a commoner. She's just a commoner. But she's also a ba'muku, meaning a hoa for the elites. I mean, on behalf of the criminal organization, the red one, as well as the white one. So she's been accepted by the elites, because of your Mr. and Mrs. Yog, because of Heinz Treasons, Mr. and Mrs. Heinz Treasons, and Atalana. That's correct. So that's why she would have been accepted by the elites. As a hoa, that's correct, on behalf of the criminal organization. So that means my cousin is a hoa to the New Zealand police force. So if any police officers want to have sex with your cousin, it's the green light. It's the green light all the way. That's correct. Yes. Because of the criminal organization, because of the MMB and Kkks organization, that's correct. So if any lawyers want to have sex with my cousin, there's always a green light. There's a green light there. There's no no. They say yes all the way. And if any judges want to have sex with my cousin, it's a green light. There's a green light there. Now, if any elites want to have sex with my cousin, it's a green light. It's a green light all the way. It's because, well, it looks like in your case, she's more privileged than you because she was accepted by the elites. But can you see now what would happen if your cousin is actually psychotic, sick with incest and other mental disorders? That's correct. That is classic for psychopaths. for families that are born into criminal organization, family that have criminal organizations. Your cousin's family were born into a criminal organization, which is the Mongol Mob Association. That's correct. Got a history, got a bad record and a bad history. That her daddy used to beat the crap, used to give her hidings when they were young. And the same with her mommy. That's correct. Violence was there in their family. It's only just now that as she grew older, that's great. But like I said, her beauty is captivating. But her beauty has some sort of witchcraft. It can make you do things. And also you would be more inclined to protect her rather than doing the right thing. Do you know what I mean? So say, for example, the incest in the family, the Treasons family, they should have been disciplined. They should have been dealt to and cleansed out and stopped. Instead, the Treasons family decided to protect them and nurture them. That's correct. And cover up the incest. So they would do anything to protect. That's correct. Their baby brother. That's correct. Your cousin's husband. That's how bad your dad's side family is. Olamakua prejudice. That's how prejudiced your dad's side of the family. When it came to his brothers and sisters, their baby brother was more important, and his so-called mistress, or formerly mistress, and his so-called wife, that's correct, are more important. And you can see that, I can see that how families that are born in criminal organizations make excuses and cover up. That's correct. And sadly, this whole thing is going to come in the courts. So I guess that's why some of the elites send their videos in your direction. It's only because they were doing it on behalf of my cousin's dictatorships. So this whole time, that's correct, your cousin has been doing a lot of dictating through these people, these tenants inside, these criminals inside this building, and even through the elites, and even through other people. That's correct. But those two in Timarua, as in Mr. and Mrs. Heinz and Atalana Treasons, you two are probably the worst example of members of the elites, but members of the Christian faith. I mean, your uncle is ordained. That's great, as a deacon. But the difference between an ordained deacon, that's what your uncle is that he's not a king. He's not a king. This one here is a king. And the difference is he's not a sovereign head, but I'm a sovereign head. I and Pope Francis, we have something very common, that's correct. Your uncle, Heinz Treasons, he's not on the same playing field as Pope Francis, but this one is, because I'm a national bastard, but because I'm Dr. Snow Brown. I'm a sovereign head. So effectively, I am the head of the Snow Cane Club congregation, the new faith, the reborn faith around the globe. I am the new head. That's great. I am the new head of state. And our state is Crystal Kingdom. It's an independent state. So it's just like the Vatican City. That's great. So my intellectual property is that powerful, and that's great. Valuable. Can you imagine now if I marry the right man? If I marry, that's great, I would become queen. That's great. Well, you don't know that, of course. My husband will become the king. That's great. And we will have our monarch, brown monarch. Now, that is of course, is going to make the rest of your rallies very jealous. Except they won't be around. They'll either be put down 6 feet under, a lot of your rallies, that's correct, or they will be in jail, just like with the government of New Zealand. So I won't ever have anything to do with any of them. So when I said goodbye on the 14th of November, 2019, that was the end of it. I am going on the 15th of December to file my restraining order, and I will be dissolving Parliament and kicking your country, that's great, and overtaking your country. Overruling. It's because I'm a sovereign head that was born here in your country. And on my logo, it said Aotearoa, New Zealand. So, welcome, Haere Mai. Or is it haereatu? That's correct. Oh, and I'm leaving your country. My asylum application. See, the problem with your rallies, because they were so jealous. I mean, this feels like the story of Cinderella or the story of, Snow White. And actually, it feels more, actually, it's worse than that. That's correct. Because my life was attempted 3 times. Meaning, they try to kill you. And at every opportunity and at every turn, they try to drug you because they didn't want you to remember what the police officers had done, or they didn't want you to remember a lot of the harms that they had inflicted upon yourself. That's correct. In the last 26 years of being targeted, but, stalked like a slave. I mean, when I think about Prince Joseph, that's correct, of Egypt. Well, it's no different from Joseph of Egypt, except your case is it's worse than Prince Joseph of Egypt. That's correct. Who rose up to the ranks. But of course, Prince Joseph is called Prince Joseph, but I'm not a prince, I'm a king. That's correct. In this case. So, the Snow Gang Club, Snow Sheep, Snow Shepherds, everybody there in Aotearoa, New Zealand, I want you all to be behind me. That's great. To give me your support and your backing, and also pray for me, because when I come to court to deal with this criminal organization and your government, and especially the New Zealand police, right, there seems to be a lot of conflict of interest now. Can you understand now why I have to leave your country? Because of my intellectual property being so valuable and everything that I create has been so valuable, your government of New Zealand stole, using the criminal organizations, Kkks, Mmbs, not only to steal from me and my family, but also to study and experiment on this ignoble. And that's not even allowed when you're dealing with royals, say in Dubai. I mean, oh my God, that's not even allowed at all. That's correct. And if you had royals in Germany, that kind of thing just doesn't happen. So here in New Zealand, I don't know why this happened. Probably because government of New Zealand is founded on anarchy and corruption, and also possibly arbitrary dictatorships. But I think it's because of the treaty partnership. And the fact that you were born in the islands, born in Samoa, and that you look indigenous, that they automatically just, ruled you out. That's correct. And allowed a bunch of criminals, to take over. My poor family, we should never have, maybe your dad made a terrible mistake in not moving. We should have left this country ages ago and gone to Australia. I guess that's the saddest part, was now I'm having to deal with the organization and your rallies, who have been a huge, massive burden, but a terrible, heinous, enemies of my dad and of our royal family. That's correct. Can you imagine how the people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, wouldn't give you a donation? And it was because, the government of New Zealand was because some idiot had decided, or let's just say your rallies in this case, had gone through a lawyer, Mr. Anthony Shaw, and it looks like your cousin fucked the shit out of him. That's correct. And satisfied him so much so, and probably satisfied the police officers that served the trespass notice that got you set up. That's correct, because they served it blank on the back on 21st of April 2007. And also she satisfied probably the judge who was dealing with that order of supervision, and the rest of the staff at the courts, that, oh my God, your cousin is so evil. I know. The fact that she's able to do that kind of abuse, that kind of power, privilege, and only because she's part of a criminal organization, only because she was part of the elites. And I'm sorry, the elites, I hold you fully accountable for all the atrocities that happen here at this address and what's already taken place, where people are actually giving you rubbish. People are ill-treating you and subjecting you to detriments giving you discrimination, but I'm giving you shit that I don't need being a sovereign head, but if I say, oh, that's great. I don't deserve those kind of nonsense, New Zealand. How dare you come into my kingdom, take advantage of my intellectual property for nothing, and you think I'm nothing from where I'm standing? Your country is nothing. Your country is nothing. That's why I didn't get anything from you. That's correct. So lela ufaku yako. Wasa lavangi Samoa. I may say I'm on 5 out. Maisi kangaka makai and whatnot. Ya okonga le amanga iako rights nge la kuunge. Mako you know mengai ko ke mimikai. Wasa oko onga ever enter lo kingdom. Well, anyway, lo kingdom ele ko open to the public. Well, private lo kingdom. Langa eliese alofa. Eliese fa'aloalo. You know, my wife out at this age, you look forward lako. If I don't longer, but only respect nga au mai au loku. But when it came to you, ese awinga akaka Samoa, iko kongo la kuunge and even fafo waku. Ese lavale inga show up my anga. Ele loko leanga le makua loko leanga ia. Afapea uia. Lopo wasiri aku e kai kusa lavale loko leanga o kangaka Samoa. Ira kungunge makaka mauli a wasili aku le loko leanga o kangaka mauli. Langa mea mamoe I kangaka palangi. Ila o kangaka lea. So mea langa le waham so o ai oe. Onga ole pa umuku so o kangaka. The kangaka meo commoners in this country. Anga le ai criminal organizations here. Ma privileges here were avel malo musila. Gakale kaupulea, but even people that are educated and people that work for that are officials in the system. Angale abuse your male privileges that I fapela. Mangufa penge, I'm masalo, ili ai lava se meleanga e o mayawe. Yeah, exactly. But the problem is your rallies and your cousin side of the family were part of that criminal evil organization, and that's why you got targeted a lot and was made out to be the laughing stock, you know, and somebody that they just like to pick on and make fun of. See how they couldn't arrest so-called Tavita Lipine? Tavita Lipine is a ufa and a paumuku, that's correct. You know, the way that I speak, I got every right to say whatever I say because I'm a meek king and I'm a meek natural noble pastor. But because you all are so unworthy and undeserving, because you don't understand me, I'm German, that's correct, Scottish, you don't need to enter my kingdom. My kingdom is effectively now going to be private. You want to enter? You got to pay to enter my kingdom. That's correct. You want to respect me? You got to learn to do things according to my conditions in my intellectual property. Now, can you understand now why criminals are banned from my church TV? Because, well, just look at my case. Now I have to go to court to deal with them. That's correct. And I should never, no ordained clergyman should ever have to deal with something like that on their own inside the courts of New Zealand. Their law should ever be ignored like that by the New Zealand police. That's correct. Why? Even if they were having sex with criminals and sex with the rest of the local township and sex with elites, they should still do their job. That's correct. At the end of the day, a crime is a crime. Just because you got a nice beak, a nice pussy, a nice prick, a nice ass, and because you've fallen in love with the criminals, don't mean that you can break the law, you know, and be above the law as well without your undies. Get it? Right, well, you all know now. You all have a nice day today. I certainly am going to have a nice day. But as I said, this restraining order is going to be filed. And I will be at peace. My daddy will be so proud of me. That's correct. Because I would have done something about a criminal organization, but about an enemy of Satan the devil. But this enemy, they should have been conquered and buried a long time ago. My daddy couldn't do anything, and I could understand why. But never mind. His so-called, this Meek, his eldest, is going to do it for him. And, and that will appease his soul, and will also appease Archangel Orion. The many people that this organization abused and killed because of you and your immediate family, that's great. Such a shame that the governor of New Zealand and the rest of, and the New Zealand police would take advantage of your intellectual property. And now they want to dominate and dictate your intellectual property. That is a private monarch. I mean, they couldn't tell your Pope Francis and even the Catholic Church, that's great, to dominate their intellectual property and try to dictate and tell them, by the way, we want you to run it this way. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way when you've got a private monarch. That's correct. And the government of New Zealand doesn't own my intellectual property. Doesn't own my kingdom. Doesn't own my monarch. That's why it's worth 150 billion. Are you willing to pay that? Because the government of New Zealand now owes you on behalf of this criminal organization and the white one. That's correct. And your rallies. But more so the criminal organization, because after all, you gave money. You aided and abetted their criminal activities, their crimes against this noble. So I'm afraid, I got every right to come to court. I mean, I'm not some gang member. Our family are not gang members. We were not born into one. Don't try to make us be part of some garbage criminal organization. That's correct. Everybody out there that in the Samoa community know very well what your family is. But I think what happened on Melo Kupu, o whao ngā, ele au commoners, ma le au loko leanga, ma le au lekau lia, le ko ainga, ngā, to give them, blessings for free, and also to give them integrity of some sort, which is just not on. I know. It's crazy, all right? Ole makua le ma whau lava, o karakangu sila, ba e loa ngā, lo wingonga o tails lava mele le kule maulu. Wasiri ako nga pupoko ngaka ele aingi la ko qualifications. Ba wa fa maongi yawa o onga. Malau kingdom. Ilo kangaka nga ho ile university, that's great. Lo kangaka nga o nga le leila ko onga. Le leila ko onga. I turned out to be part of criminal organizations. Ran away with the spoon and the cow and the sheep. Right, you all take care now. And we'll continue this preaching. Welcome to my world. Whawhetai lava, mole. Mole tau halong mai. Thank you for your time. And thank you for lending your ears and hearts and everything else. And thank you for being, what? Oh, for being so kind. That's great. In taking the time, let alone, this what spare time you've got on you to listen to what I've got to preach about. Because it might just be the one thing that's going to save a lot of you from where? From either going 6 feet under, from being buried, or from losing a member of your family, or from going to jailbird. That's correct. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen.